Just going off your quick take, saying that these incidents are increasingly drawing in Japan as being a major player, is this Pyongyang's kind of strategy to try and create further divisiveness between allies?
Yeah, I think that's true, right? I mean, there's no particular reason why Japan has to get sucked into this. Japan is relevant, obviously, but, Japan is not a direct strategic competitor to North Korea. It's obviously not nearly as vested in sort of the fate of the peninsula as South Korea and the United States. And so shooting missiles over Japan, this is the second time in as many weeks. I mean, this is a way to sort of rope the Japanese in and threaten their civilians also, which is something that the leaders of South Korea and the United States take seriously as well, right? And so this is just sort of North Korea, sort of mucking things up, right? Sort of creating more and more tension and difficulty where it really isn't necessary. These kinds of launches sort of prove the kind of regime that North Korea is. They'll just callously threaten civilians.
Robert, we already heard rhetoric from Rex Tillerson overnight putting more pressure on China to exercise its, real or perceived leverage, whatever it still has, over North Korea. How much influence does Beijing actually have? And do you expect, with the UN reconvening again, that there's much more that they'd be willing to do in the sense that they don't want a humanitarian disaster?
Yeah, this is the big debate that we have every time we have one of these missile launches, right? They violate the UN Security Council resolutions. North Korea is not allowed to do this technically. And much of the punishment then turns on sanctions that require Chinese enforcement because North Korea's longest land border obviously is with China. And there's this big debate out there. The Chinese call this the China responsibility theory, and they reject it. I think a lot of Western analysts don't accept that. I myself don't accept that rejection. I think that if China really put the screws to North Korea, could actually sort of force North Korea back to the table. Just think about the oil embargo that's being discussed. North Korea is still basically a carbon economy like the rest of the world. They need gasoline for their cars. Even the elites need gasoline for their cars, right? And if you deprive that import, the North Koreans are in real trouble. So I just don't buy this idea that China couldn't do more. I understand why the Chinese don't want to do it, right? I mean, I think we all understand that the Chinese don't want North Korea to implode, which is probably which is a possibility. But the idea that China couldn't do anything, couldn't do more, I think that's incorrect.
Robert, David here in Hong Kong. I'm just wondering, yes, because we keep talking about the same things whenever these things happen. I'm just wondering whether we're having the right conversation here, because I mean, I do understand the argument that if we let North Korea be, then it becomes a nuclear state. But talk to us. What is the risk of doing nothing and just letting them be? Right.
So as things go forward, right, China's probably not going to help us too much, right? I think that's pretty established. President Trump made a pretty significant effort on that, right? And a lot of people, analysts, people like me who do this sort of thing, we've been talking about this for 10 years. The Obama people talk about this as well. So if China's not going to come around, what's next? And I think that means sort of unilateral action on our part, by which I do not mean airstrikes. I mean missile defense. I have the feeling that that is sort of what's coming. That's sort of the future, the strategic future, if you will, of Northeast Asia, kind of competition between North Korean nuclear missiles and Japanese and South Korean missile defense. The problem is that missile defense is really expensive and it's leaky. And so if we can't keep up with North Korean missilization, then eventually there's going to be pressure to strike North Korea, the airstrikes that the president has talked about. That's what I really worry about. I don't think we're on the cusp of war right now, but missile defense is a medium-term solution at best.